What's up, people? Cornell Belcher. Who's this guy? Cornell Belcher. Wow, Conboy, you look really different. Yeah, they're supposed to be jumping in here any second now. Conboy says he'll be on in about 10 minutes. He's going to hop off a WIC panel that he is on. It was a great debate, the best debate. Please have a debate on Project 2025. I want to see MAGA defend this. Probably not going to see MAGA defend this because right now they're doing everything in their power to distance themselves, or at least the Trump campaign is from MAGA. Good luck with that. Or from Project 2025. Good luck with that. Let's see here. While we wait. Can we at least replace Biden's? No, that's not it. That was not the one there. Oh, God damn it. No, this still isn't it. Where is it? Okay, there we go. Why don't Dems in Congress and Biden increase SCOTUS to 13 now? Why wait? Because you need both the House and the Senate to change the federal statute to increase the size of the Supreme Court. And right now, Republicans are in control of the House, which means they'll never back it, even if Biden and every other Democrat would. Hey, anti-corporatist. No, I didn't. I have not proposed an alternative ticket. I mean, again, this is probably what we're going to be talking about for most of the panel. It's not something I really want to talk about a lot, but I understand why people want to talk about it, replacing Biden. But no, I mean, at the end of the day, if Biden backs out, it's going to have to be Harris at the top of the ticket because you want access to the Biden-Harris fundraising. That's hundreds of millions of dollars. It's more fundraising than the DNC itself has. And they're going to need that war chest. So, I mean, I don't know at this point. Saw a poll the other day that said Hillary Clinton and Vice President Harris would defeat Trump. That seems like an uninspired ticket, but it's what one of the polls said. Any opinions on Chevron? Son of a bitch. There we go. Yeah, I think the Chevron decision, listen, I'm not an attorney, so it's entirely possible that the legal rigor of the decision was perfectly merited. But I think in terms of the outcome, it's awful. I think that deference should be paid to executive branch agencies and career experts, particularly in technical fields like, the EPA. And it's not like Chevron deference meant that you couldn't, executive agencies' decisions weren't justiciable. They were. A court could still override the EPA under Chevron deference. It's just basically that the burden was higher because general deference would be paid to the agency in question if there was any ambiguity in the statute. I think that's a pretty good standard because it still gave courts the ultimate power. It just made it harder for them to snap their fingers and, overturn an executive branch decision. Three minutes till Lacana Boy and Pisco get here. What's up, baby? The attorneys that I've heard talking about it say that it's a freaking nightmare. The court is probably going to choke on all of the extra cases. Good letdown. Yeah, I don't know what the consequences will be, but I imagine it's not going to be great. Yo, what up, buddy?
What's up, man?
Living the dream. Living the dream. I'm going to put you on bottom. Just get
I should sit up.
No, man. Hey, listen, this isn't church. What are you talking about? You can recline, you can lounge.
We've all got a very similar fit. Got the short sleeves. I've got a Henley. You guys. Up. That's true. That's true. I've got the front pocket. What is this front pocket really for? I only saw my grandpa use this to put cigarettes in it. I mean, what do you put your keys in there or something? I don't know.
I can't remember who sang the song, but there's that song "Pocket Full of Sunshine." Was that?
Yes.
Was that? I don't remember who sang that song. I got a pocket full of sunshine. There you go. So you put your sunshine right in there.
Yeah, yeah. I just have a picture of you. That's my sunshine.
It's that I'm telling you that will like disperse any rain cloud. Just a picture of me. Frame it.
Yeah,
be good.
We're missing Pisco. Where's that lying hack piece of shit Pisco when we need him?
Live like 30 minutes ago to yell at somebody on the internet. Pisco.
Naturally.
He's yelling at somebody on the internet. We'll be waiting forever.
Yeah. Don't disagree with Pisco.
I might have a conversation with Adam and Sitch this week.
Hey, that's good, man. Good.
Yeah.
I've spoken to Adam at one point. He's a somewhat regular chatter of mine, actually, when I go live. It's kind of interesting. I didn't realize his YouTube channel, I guess maybe him specifically, is just called Adam. So I just thought it was just some random guy named Adam in my chat. It's like, oh no, that's
they have
Adam
their own.
Adam and
he has a separate channel.
So he apparently that's, I don't know if he actually uploads on it, but apparently that's like his chatter YouTube channel or whatever, which is interesting. Yeah, we can talk about that. I didn't really. Well, I guess I'll understand it. I didn't follow it too closely. I'll understand it more when Pisco gets here as to what the heck was going on Twitter.
They don't like Pisco at all. They were talking mad shit about him.
Yeah. I think there's love lost there. I think that that relationship soured real quick.
Pisco and Adam boxing match. Let's make it happen.
Is it too late for me to back out of this and then add my Twitter to this call?
I'm afraid if you back out, you won't be able to add it again. Wonder if there's an add channels.
Let me just try. Well, actually, hold on.
All right, Toodles.
Oh God, high risk play from Hutch.
He is.
We'll see if it works out.
If I do this,
it's okay because it lets. No, Hutch, baby, come back. Ooh, any kind of fool could see. And by the way, speaking of these classic rock and classic pop songs, I have to tell you, the way that you have your setup configured, there's a 70s style disco glint off of your headphones.
Yes.
When I watch your videos, it's very surreal.
Yeah, I thought about, I was like, is this bad production because I've got the shiny headphones? But it's like people don't. you're not gonna like your channel's not gonna fail if you got shiny headphones or not. Come on.
No, I actually think again it looks really retro.
Did it work, Hutch? Are you live on Twitch or Twitter now?
No, I guess it's just a one and done for the when you initially click on the link.
I think part of it is that I don't know if don't you have to have some sort of premium account to try stream on Restream?
Buddy, I've had this premium account for like 2 years. I've used it a grand total of probably 30 times. Like I have no fucking clue. I really don't, unfortunately.
Well, I'm saying that might be why Hutch can't. It's not working on his Twitter if he doesn't have the.
No, I didn't click the thing. I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he didn't add it when he added his channel, and I think now that we've gone live, it's like past the point of no return. So it's like one of those things. And to be honest with you, this was so slapdash because I thought that Pisco was going to weigh in on the title. But I love all the lib puns, so it's pretty good. Lib and lib. Stupidly, I was like, what about lib, laugh, love? I thought that'd be fun.
That one would have been good. I like Lib and Learn. I like Lib and Learn. That's good. Short.
Lib, laugh, love is that's like our T-shirt design. That's what it says on our
Yes, it's that douchey like wall portrait thingy that you have in the living room of every Southern home. I say that as a proud resident of the South.
Kentucky's not a Southern state. Okay,
I'm in North Carolina now. So.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind. I thought you were referring to your place of birth, Kentucky.
Place of birth was Pennsylvania. You have my entire biography all fucked up.
You talked about how you're from Kentucky, I feel like.
Yeah, I spent most of my life in Kentucky. Okay.
Well, if someone says they're from Kentucky, I'm gonna be like they were conceived and born in this place.
I spent the bulk of my life in Kentucky, which explains my deeply held conservative values.
That's true.
I kid. What's up, baby? What's up?
How we doing?
You went live early.
Yeah, because these reply guys, can't live with them, can't live without them.
Says the ultimate reply guy himself. Let's be honest, right? I mean, I'm just saying.
Was there some controversy about my reply?
I know not of what you speak. I heard.
Did I do something?
I heard a Kana boy.
Look, Pisco's the kind of guy to write a 300-page book worth of Twitter replies if you disagree with him. All right,
because
honestly,
I'm right.
I love that.
I'm right, and people are like, you don't care about these issues. I care the most. I'm the most sincere. You don't understand. I feel it every time.
Would say
the polls move a little bit. My heart pounds. I intuitively know what's happening with the polls, and I just know it. And they threw stones first. You know what? I'm not gonna throw stones. But I know things. I have little whisperers who tweet me things and tell me what things are going on. You know who you are. We
wanted to discuss this. We could just start. I mean, what happened with you and Adam? I didn't follow it super closely, so I don't know exactly what happened. Lay the groundwork for us.
Well, first, I'm happy to do that. Can we inaugurate our new amazing name?
Live and Learn.
Oh,
it
wow.
may change next week. It could be Lib and Let Live.
Could be the same.
It could be Lib, Laugh, Love. It could be Live Free, Die Hard.
No matter what.
I like Live and Learn. I think it's good. It's like short, snappy. It's good.
Snappy. It gets the people going. Welcome to this show. And for our very first topic of our very first named show, I guess, we're talking about some Twitter beef. I'm happy to do it. Because it is about a topical issue, which is the election.
Yeah, I think you could frame it. I think you can frame this in a way not just about the election, but also the ever persistent battle between liberals and progressives versus centrists and that sort of thing. I don't think you have to denigrate it to just Twitter beef.
Yeah. I think that there's something substantive here as well. And I don't think, let me give Adam a bone here before we get into the good stuff. Here's Adam's bone. His position is...
Who is Adam Pisco for the audience?
Oh, sorry. There's this thing called the Adam and Sitch or Sitch and Adam show. Order is not relevant. People have their different favorites. I actually really think Adam is funny. And I actually think Sitch can be funny, even though most of the time they're not, because they're like soying out over like woke people. But when they're not doing that, they can have some quips here and there. And I actually like them. But they run a show. They I don't know if they market themselves as centrist, but they're kind of like truth tellers. That's how they view themselves as. Like we tell it how it is in a way.
Straight shooters respected on both sides.
Right.
Yes.
So That's how they view themselves, and they embrace the fact that like we'll call out on both sides, right? Is that fair? Yeah. I think it's fair.
I would say that is. I would say that is a fair characterization of how they present themselves. Yes.
I would say artfully put, Econoboy. Well said.
And they, to be fair to them as well, because they think I'm never fair. I'm always performative. They do call out emphatically sometimes when Republicans do things, and I think that Josiah might poke at the seams there and might like, did they really do it the way I wanted them to, or did they say it just before they were about to blast some woke actress or something? I hear that, but they do criticize them, and so it's not a whole cloth made up lie unless you take the Josiah view that it's all a routine, or I don't know if that's your view, but you can go ahead and represent yourself.
The next segment, by the way, audience, is going to be Ryan Pisco's beef. Yeah, exactly.
It's being made in real time. Why do you hate Adam so much, Josiah? Answer that.
I don't hate. I love engaging with Sitch and Adam. They just do not reciprocate my feelings. It's one of those like schoolyard crushes. Yeah, it's like one of those schoolyard crushes where I like pulling on their pigtails, but they don't feel the same way. So
just because you love them doesn't mean they love you.
No, it's unrequited.
What did you do to get blocked?
I don't know. I feel like they like me more than you, even though I've done more things to upset them.
They didn't block me, so I must be better.
Well, you're like, you have clout. Well, so does Desire now. It's, you know what?
We're clouded up, baby.
You guys are clouded. No, I think that, listen, I don't know why specifically, or I can't remember. I don't think I gotta remember my timeline correctly. About a year ago, we were on a panel hosted by Cherry, and it was Steven and I versus Sitch and Adam.
And then I joined in.
And then you joined in, and Aaron Straight Array joined in too. And I thought it was wildly entertaining. Apparently they caught a lot of heat. My understanding is from DGG, Destiny's community afterwards.
Oh, they're conspiracists. They think that I'm running those threads. I've never commented on those threads. I never post them anywhere. I don't know those threads. All right.
Yeah. So that was kind of like the first pebble in the avalanche. Now, then we ended up having a follow-up discussion. And it was basically just Sitch and I, because Adam wouldn't even talk to me at one point. I think I asked him a question. He snapped at me and he's like, "I'm not fucking talking to you or whatever. I'm just here to basically moderate the discussion." So I was like, "Oh, okay."
I like that.
And then that was it. We haven't talked. I think I've super chatted them a couple of times.
He just blocks you.
But yeah, well, it was either before that, or
you probably said some shit
on Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah, you probably said some shit. I don't see him just based on, I do think it's funny that, like, I don't know, a moderator just tells you to shut the fuck up.
All I'll say is I think at my most aggressive on Twitter and in conversations, I don't think I'm any more aggressive than you. So I'm not sure what it is, but I think it's like a close association between me and that bad reception they got with that first panel with Steven.
Yeah.
Again, the dislike is one-sided. I hate a lot of their views, but I like sparring with people with whom I disagree. Yeah.
It's always fun on being on the show, for sure.
Exactly. So
we got the immovable object Adam versus the unstoppable force Pisco. Because Pisco, the way that Pisco debates, even the way he writes, it's almost like it's not just that you disagree with someone, Pisco. It's like it is unfathomable that this person is saying this, right? Like it's like, I can't believe you would say this, right? And don't get me wrong, I feel that way when I talk to many a person in this online politics community. But you're not a very disagreeable person. But when you do disagree with someone, it's like a really strongly held belief. I feel like, it's like, I'm not just going to call anybody out, right? So
he doesn't believe in half measures. I caught a stray several weeks ago that I had to square up with Pisco on.
Elbows.
Yeah, it was like one of those things like, "Hey man, what's your favorite color?" And I was like, "Blue." And he's like, "You fucking piece of shit." And he was basically giving me the verbal equivalent of a rib shot. And I was like, whoa, damn.
So wait, Pisco, what did you do? How did this start with Adam?
So this is what happened. and I'm not going to get into all the context back and forth. I disagree. I saw what they were, some things they were saying about our previous statements where they're like, this was all, we were always opening the door to him and we were just trying to be nice and squash the beef. I'm like, what beef, dude? I just like, I can criticizing you for public positions just like you do to everyone else. That's one thing I think that people should absolutely take from this, is that there's a double standard with respect to them and what they do to other people versus what they can take. And I think that is very hard to contest. That everything becomes personal in a way that, like, incredibly fast, where I don't think you should necessarily take it as personal when we're criticizing public views, although I can get it maybe if you're getting to intention. So what happened here? So
can I just say something on that particular thing? Like, even now, right, I'm trying to be very careful with my words because I have no idea. Number one, I have no idea if they'll see this. Number two, I have no idea what could potentially set them off. So I'll tell you one of the things in the space that drives me nuts, and it's not just Sitch and Adam, I've had it with other creators as well, is the feeling like you have to walk on eggshells in terms of engaging with somebody. Otherwise, they'll fly off the handle, or they'll block you, or it stops being like a genuine disagreement about politics. I'll use our frequent foil Rob Noor as an example. One of the great things about Rob is, I mean, yeah, he comes out swinging pretty unprovoked. Like, you could try to have a civil conversation with him, and he kind of goes
unprovoked
to full Pisco, like goes from zero to Pisco real quick.
Yeah.
But he also kind of makes it clear that, he can turn it on and off and he'd still have a beer with you. Right. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And then I think other people like take it profoundly personally. And as somebody who likes to have civil conversations, but also likes throwing a fuck you to people like in a panel, it's a really strange feeling that, like, you have to run your sentences through some sort of like Chat GPT program to make it come out as diplomatically as possible. And there's still a 50% chance of failure. So
they'll take offense.
So it's enormously frustrating, I'll just say.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into the topics.
Okay. My bad.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about is, and this has not been an uncommon sentiment. Adam had said that anyone who wants to vote for Biden, and this is kind of the substantive topic, you're voting for like a mentally decomposing person within a black box, and it's a danger to the republic. I don't think that that's an illegitimate view to think that like mental acuity is an important component of who you vote for president. And maybe people in here can have a disagreement about how much that has deteriorated. And certainly the country is, and certainly Democrat insiders are having a conversation about that right now. But I sort of piped in the way I think a lot of us would, and be like, we would vote for him even if we knew that it was super dangerous, because the alternative is much more dangerous. And that's not like an uncommon thing to say. And he took that the wrong way and said, like, you're not, and I'm someone who has said that Biden, I think, should step down. So he is like accusing me of being biased or something, or I don't know what he said. Well, I actually don't remember, but at a certain point he said, if the election were held today, I'd vote for Trump. And the reason why I think it's important is not because I think it's an opinion that makes sense, because I think it doesn't make sense if your priors are that Trump tried to steal the election, the American democracy, right? And the priors are, this is a massive administrative state where we have plenty of checks on a president who's incapable of doing the office. So I don't think it logically makes sense, analytically makes sense as a framework to compare these two candidates. But I don't think it's an uncommon opinion. I think there are thousands of people who think the way Adam did. And this is me giving Adam his bone. One of the reasons why I want Biden to drop out is because he's not alone. There are people who take the same exact view that, yes, Trump is a threat to democracy, but Biden's more of a threat, or it's worse for this. And so that's the bone I'll throw to him, is that even though I think it's an illogical, incoherent opinion, it's not unheard of.
It's like those pictures. Do you remember when we were kids? There's pictures that you look at, and some people look at it and they see the profile of like an old woman, and then some people look at
it
like
a Rorschach test,
and they a little bit like a Rorschach test. But Biden's public appearances have sort of turned into that. So there was a clip going around of him at a church a few days ago. That's like the perfect example of this, where the priest said everybody should rise, and there was a man sitting next to Biden, a man priest that rose, and then Biden had this moment where he almost stood up, And then the person sitting to his right was a woman. She stayed seated, and you could tell, like, anybody who's been to mass. Have you guys been to mass in your lives? Like,
sure.
You go to like a
Catholic
different
wedding.
church.
You stand
right.
up
Yeah.
and
You go to a different
smile.
church and you're kind of looking around to see, like, is it time to rise? I don't know. It was just so, like, as somebody who's been in that position many times in my life, I know exactly what that feeling is like. And yet for a lot of people, especially after the debate, when they saw that clip of Biden doing that, they're like, oh man, this is elder abuse. Like, he literally doesn't know where he is. And I feel like there has been 1,000 clips of Biden where it's like that, where I look at it and I'm like, oh, he looks like an aged man who's just having kind of a slow reaction to the moment. And then fucking Dave Rubin looks at it and he says, you know, this is dementia. And for a lot of the people in the country right now that legitimately believe that it's dementia, you know, in their minds, you know, for a lot of, I don't know how many, but for a lot of people, they're like, well, you know, I'd rather have Trump than that. Which of course I totally disagree with, but yeah,
I think that's part of the fundamental disagreement that Pisco's having with Adam, because you'll see a lot of people say this, and I guess Adam's the only one that I've heard who actually has openly said. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are thinking this, who have said like, "Oh, Biden has dementia, and I think that a demented Biden is a more dangerous person to be president than Donald Trump." Whereas it sounds like Pisco, what you're saying is, well, fuck, even if it's true that Biden has, you know, struggling with dementia or whatever, that person is still not as dangerous as being president than Donald Trump, right? Like, even if we take everything that you're saying that's true about Biden, oh, he's a dying old man who has dementia or Alzheimer's or whatever it is, like, I would rather that guy be president than Donald Trump, right? And there's good reasons to make
correct.
that,
Those of you who are sorry, you can finish. Sorry, I mean,
no, that was it. That was
okay.
It. Yeah, I mean,
for those legal folks out there, you ever heard of a motion to dismiss? In a motion to dismiss, you assume all the facts of the non-movement. And you assume what, you know, even if, right, everything as alleged in the complaint in the indictment is true or whatever, it doesn't state a claim for which relief can be had or whatever the thing is, right? And so when Adam says that, I'm adopting as Econoboy reference that posture. I'm assuming that he is describing Biden's condition as is, which is that he is just literally not perceiving the universe, or it's not perceiving matter in some way. And I do maintain that it's obvious that person is less of a threat to the presidency than Donald Trump, who an aware and conscious Donald Trump, let's say. And I know that Josiah will dispute that. The reason I go after that is because I think that it's an opportunity to really get into that argument and discuss it. And I think that there's an uncomfort there. I think there's an uncomfort for someone to both acknowledge that someone tried to literally steal an election, his own words, right? In those situations, what could be worse than that? What could be worse than, I mean, we have fought and killed for our elections. We had a revolution for our elections. We fought a civil war to maintain this constitution the way it was, and to change it using lawful means and not unlawful coup d'etat means, right? Like, if preserving this system isn't worth dying for, isn't worth an old guy maybe dying in office, I mean, what would he have to do? What is of more importance than our values? What is of more importance than our way of life? And
what they usually do is they go to the extreme hypothetical, which is like Biden gets the call at 3 a.m. that a nuke is headed to Florida. And that's what they point to. And unfortunately, it just is the case that is a really compelling argument for a lot of people. I think it's silly. I don't think Biden is incapable of like facing that moment if he had to, but it's just the reality that it is compelling to like normies and people that are apolitical and people that are not very engaged. But yeah,
that's compelling. I think that, so somebody in chat mentions like, well, I think that's a losing argument. The idea that like, yeah, Biden's got dementia, but you know, he's still better than Trump. Right. And, but to be fair, our argument, so I don't know anybody, I don't think Biden actually is struggling with dementia. I think he's just a slow old man essentially. Right now, I think that there's a difference between like, oh, you know, he's a slow old man who, you know, takes extra time to, you know, think about things or make a decision or whatever. That's obviously a lot less dangerous than somebody has dementia. But again, if we just isolate those things in a vacuum, Trump rationally thought he pondered the idea of nuclear bombing a hurricane because he thought that would like stop the hurricane from happening. Right. Like this guy, like, it's like this guy is presumably a rationally thinking individual, but he's so stupid. Like, he's actually such a dumb person. It's more dangerous to be really, really stupid and actually think these things are reasonable to talk about than someone who has, you know, episodes of dementia or something like that when you're surrounded by a whole team of people. And I don't know. I think that's
no. I listen again. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I made my position on this known, but certainly the comparison between Biden and Trump, there are so many premises that I just refuse to grant because I think they're unsubstantiated, and the opposite is worth defending. So I think people take a dishonest and reductive view and pitch it as this idea of, again, this well-intentioned but senile man versus the way I hear about it is someone who's senile versus a criminal. And I think that that's just dishonest and reductive. Set aside whatever you think of President Biden. But again, we know this, and I do think it's worth fighting on because the polls back it up, including the post-debate polls, I might add, as well as things that we've heard from members of Trump's own cabinet, is precisely what Econoboy is talking about. Trump is not a genius. Trump is not a statesman. Trump is not particularly well educated with respect to politics. So it's not like your choice is, Peace Goes a Star Wars fan too. So it's not like your choice is Emperor Palpatine versus a buffoon. This person has all the worst qualities of Palpatine, the authoritarianism, the narcissism, but none of the genius and stability, versus a man who has been a competent executive and administrator. And to me, this is where my frustration is with a lot of so-called centrists is they just create this false equivalence. Pod Save America, those guys have been really hard on Biden, understandably here lately, but even they say it's a choice between old versus old and crazy, and the old and crazy is Trump. So I think that if the discussion is going to be had, I think in the interest of fairness, in the interest of honesty, you shouldn't concede to this idea that Trump is a beacon of mental health or that he's the very stable genius he pretends to be. He is an idiot. And he also shows signs of, again, malignant narcissism and sociopathy. And these aren't just things that we've heard about from credible sources. These are things that we witnessed firsthand. So he's not any better than Biden on the thing that people are criticizing Biden for. And he's infinitely worse in other ways. And that's where I would just die on that hill.
Well, you would die on the hill that Trump is just as cognitively declined as Joe Biden.
I would die on the hill that he is cognitively unfit for office, and I would probably make the position, hold the position that President Biden is more cognitively fit for office because there are more things you can point to a 90-minute debate. I can point to, yes, again, him wanting to nuke a hurricane. I can point to his various gaffes and flubs. I can point to the fact that 40 out of 44 cabinet officials won't endorse him. And some of them have explicitly said because he's an idiot and because he's unhinged. We don't hear that shit about Biden. So yes, even on that score, there's more evidence of Trump's cognitive decline or cognitive unfitness than Biden's. And I think that to the extent that President Biden is cognitively declining, it's in a different way. We have no evidence, like even the stories that are being littered across the Beltway right now. What we're not hearing is Biden saying, "Hey, we should totally nuke this thing," or we should invade this, or we should shoot protesters or shit like this. So yes, I'm.
Or how about he walks around like it's the year 1988. Like these are things that don't, a guy who's struggling with dementia, right? Like we don't see these kind of things coming out about Biden. And so, yeah, I think we agree, obviously, that Biden isn't literally demented. But, Adam's argument of like, it's like when you hear you could substitute in the cognitive decline of Biden with like any particular policy position of Trump, right? Like, well, yeah, Trump is crazy and he's an authoritarian, but like he's promised to cut my taxes. It's like, well, dude, like, even if that's true, even if you get like the fattest tax cut fucking you could possibly imagine, it's still not worth it, right? Because he is a threat to our fundamental democratic experiment as a country, right? Like there are just certain things that you should probably compromise. You should issue prioritization, right? Is key in this debate, right?
Well, to be honest with you guys, I don't think we're gonna be having this conversation much longer.
Good.
I agree.
Thank God.
Because Biden will retire. He's going to Cabo.
I think right now, I had a totally different tune last week, but I think right now the tea leaves are pointing in one direction. I don't know what you guys thought about Pelosi's statement this morning. I think that was significant.
100%. Yeah.
There have been very few ringing endorsements of the president.
No, those are all attacks on Biden.
Right.
Hutch is correct. Pelosi's statement, all these statements are attacks on Biden.
But particularly Pelosi, like as soon as I saw that statement from her, something kind of shifted in me where I was like, I feel like this is headed somewhere.
Yeah. It is one of the most insane stories. And I'm sorry, Josiah, I know the focus, it's unfair. It is unfair in a certain way, but this is newsworthy. And I'm sorry, this is one of the most insane and dramatic stories in the history of this country. An incumbent, a presumptive nominee with the worst alternative on the other side is going into an election, and his entire party is rebelling in open against him. And we have statements on the record by the most important Democratic person, George Clooney and others, who are saying things like, this is pretty much everyone's opinion.
Well, what's particularly significant about what Pelosi said, not just the fact that it's Pelosi, who is, arguably the most influential Democrat in DC. It's not just the fact that it's from her, but what we saw from Biden in the last week and a half has been a very sort of defiant tone. It's been a very like, I am staying in this race. My decision has been made. Yeah. The discussion is over. And what I heard from her this morning was her gently telling Biden the discussion is not over, which, it's difficult to imagine. This has nothing to do with my preferences because I still lean on the side of it being more risky to replace him. I'm more open to it now just because I did not love the Stephanopoulos interview. I just didn't. I didn't love the interview that he gave with Morning Joe.
It was awful. It was an awful
These are just not what I wanted to see. They didn't feel reassuring to me. Like I wanted to give him time to see if he could like actually make a compelling argument. So far he has not shown that. They have the NATO. There's going to be a NATO press conference tomorrow. I think it'll probably just go okay.
He's going to get one NATO question and 99 cognitive fitness questions. Yeah.
I don't know about you guys. I feel like it's not impossible that we could see a headline on Friday morning, Pelosi, Schumer, Jeffries request a meeting at the White House. Like that's where I'm at with
just reading the signs. I'll say this again as somebody who, on my channel's coverage, on my Twitter, and even in the conversation leading up to this is not a central focus of mine purely because I do believe, not that there's not merits to discussing it, but because I will also die on the hill that much of the fallout is attributable to the hyper focus on it. I think there's genuine substance there, which has been magnified. And apparently I haven't had a chance to take a look at it, but Cornell Belcher on Twitter, who just like he's an analyst who was apparently just on MSNBC within the past 2 hours, also talked about this, that there's credible evidence to suggest that the media coverage has been more damaging than the immediate fallout of the debate. So I think we also have to be honest, incessantly talking about it by mainstream figures in particular, it is part of the problem. So I think these things have to be balanced.
Can I just stop you there very quick, Josiah? Because
sure,
I hate that line, and because not because I don't think it's.
No, it's true. It's true. Wait a minute. It is absolutely true. It is true. Now you can say it's still worth it to talk about anyway, Pisco. But it is true that the incessant coverage of it has exacerbated the problem. If you disagree, if you disagree, you're dead wrong.
No, I was about to say, not that I disagree with your factual assertion.
So you agree with it, right? Just at least say you agree with it.
I agree that the coverage itself is not helpful to Joe Biden and exacerbates issues. And that's what I was in the process of saying. The reason I hate the take, though, is because it goes back to, I'm sorry, I have to say it. And I love Joe Biden. I think that Joe Biden is an excellent president. I'm going to say it all the time, and I would vote for him if he is our nominee. And again, I'm going to say if the Trumpian call he had where he's like, screw the elites. This is not an elite thing. It's
of course not. Of course not.
And saying that is a lie. It's a lie. It's a failure to comprehend reality.
I totally agree with you that number one, the debate performance was awful. His handling of it in the aftermath, first 7 days of silence, then the George Stephanopoulos answer. not just the interview, but particularly the second to last question when he said, well, as long as I do my best, like, no, fuck that. It's not about you, Mr. President. It's about the rest of us. You exist.
That's a crazy
to serve.
answer.
You serve. You are a servant. And I agree, he's been an objectively good president, but rewarding him with a second term is only useful in as much as it's the best way to defeat Trump. And once it is apparently not the best way to defeat Trump, then yeah, fuck off. You are not entitled to a second term at the risk of democracy. I agree with all of that. But
Josiah,
it has been
look at the warning signs.
Stop.
Josiah, look at everything that's happening here. And I understand, and I understand the frustration of people. But you have people like individuals who are burning bridges. Like, and again, I'm going to come back to George Clooney. I know that people laugh at George Clooney, whatever. This guy raised a shit ton of money for Biden. He likes Biden a lot.
Significant fundraiser.
He says, when I talked to him 3 weeks ago, or whenever it was, he was like he was in the debate. You know what that tells me? He's admitting to like not that he has like a duty to tell the public about his communications with the president. I mean, it's possible he could have thought at that moment. And again, other people have had that. They're like, oh, it was just a different moment. But when every one of us see this moment, the debate, and then all of these other moments, and I think Hutch said it well, like you're starting to are we seeing the duck or are we seeing the rabbit? You know what I'm talking about? The rabbit duck thing. Everyone's kind of having that moment, and everyone is ringing alarm bells. Pelosi's statement is an attack on Biden. Schumer, they're leaking this on purpose. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not like they're, oh wow, our staffers. They're sending it on purpose. This is the way that they send signals.
I don't disagree. I think they're being. I think they are being about as deliberate as possible with their words as they could be. Clearly, they do not have confidence.
We should take their warnings seriously.
I do. Take
I
their
know. Okay,
warnings
sorry. I'm attacking you because
you're just criticizing the media.
I'm criticizing. Listen,
I get you.
Pisco, when does it end? I'm sorry. At a certain point, it's got to end. If Biden drops out, will we shut the fuck up about it or will it continue? Here's what's going to happen. If Biden is replaced, do you know what the next 3 weeks are going to be? Why did the Democrats let this go on for as long as they do? You, Pisco, have to stand up and say, all right, we've beaten this to death. Now let's talk about the Supreme Court's decision to grant presidential immunity. Let's talk about all the crazy unhinged things that Trump has done. Let's do that. We are and there have been career journalists, Pisco, writing op-eds about this. This isn't just Josiah talking about it. These are professional journalists who understand that field far better than either of us, saying it is a media feeding frenzy.
Why do you think the New York Times is doing that? And I think this was, and again, I don't watch them a lot, but I have been watching some of their coverage of this entire story, which is fascinating and dramatic. Mm-hmm. And the Pod Save guys is who I'm referencing. And they made a really good, or it might have been Ezra Cloud. I don't know. It might have been Ezra, or it might have been. I've been watching both. Okay, and it's not. I'm not getting my opinions from them. Okay, but I have been watching their coverage. I've been watching.
Well, they're both sharp guys, by the way.
Ezra, yeah. And one of them said, "You think the New York Times is doing this because they like want to help Trump?" No, they're treating Biden and the Democrats and the left wing as protagonists. That's what they said, right? As protagonists, because they think that they're incentivized by logic, reason, and sense. And so I understand it is extremely uncomfortable and anxious. It is a crisis moment. We are living in a historical crisis moment as we're talking right now, and we're covering it. This is crazy situation we're living in, and it's uncomfortable. But I don't think the main culprit here, I have to say, is the New York Times or is these journalists that are covering what is objectively a fascinating and dramatic story that would also be covered a shit ton by 50% of the conservative media. Even if they were all silent, people would be talking about this. You were not able to stop the conversation because it's like a thing that gets to everyone. Everyone's understanding it.
It's not that the media doesn't deserve criticism. It's not like individual journalists that have been, just done a really poor job during the Biden and Trump era don't deserve criticism. At the end of the day, I feel like centering the conversation on the media is just a losing strategy because ultimately this is Biden's fault. And I'm not saying that that's what you're doing. I'm not saying that you're just avoiding that discussion altogether, Josiah. But I'm just saying,
you're clearly not. Yeah.
It's difficult to it's just not a compelling argument against what I think is more important, which is that I think the Biden campaign has really has made a huge mistake, and this is ultimately on them. So that's where I'm at with that.
And their friends have. I almost think it's so severe that these could be mortal wounds against Biden.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, like I think that the biggest problem in the Democratic Party, I would just say in general, right? And arguably it's a strength, but at a certain point it becomes a weakness, right? Is that the Democratic Party seems just foundationally unwilling to have a public fight with whoever the president is, if the president's a Democrat, right? Like foundationally unwilling to do that. It didn't happen during Obama's administration. It didn't happen during obviously Biden's administration. It's obviously not happening with the scandal with Biden's age, where like you're seeing all of this, and it's starting to bubble over because I think that internal Democrats are starting to realize that this is like a really, really bad situation. But I think part of the reason to answer that question of like why it's lasted so long, it's because of this fundamental problem, right? Is that Democrats are scared to criticize the president, whoever that president might be. I don't know, for one reason or another. If you ask Cenk Uygur, it's because, they're just scared of the king and the king's going to make them get primaried or whatever it is. I don't know, but like there's just various reasons why that seems to be the case. Maybe they're afraid of getting the Trump treatment where they do get primaried by someone that Biden endorses against them. But I don't know. I mean, it just seems like that's why it's lasted so long. I will say that I put the odds of Biden dropping out at less than I did a week ago, because at a certain point, it's like, look, there's just not enough time, right? They're just not. We're less than 4 months away from the election. We're not going to get a new candidate, if you ask me. And Democrats, because of the problem that I just mentioned, there is not going to be an open convention where a U.S. senator or a credible congressperson or a bunch of governors challenge the U.S. president at the convention to take the nomination away. That's just not going to happen, I don't think. That'd be very surprising. So,
so a couple of things. Again, I think the problem is so much more complex than that. Number one, of course, this is ultimately, this particular problem has its origins, the specific issue with Biden's performance and whatever Biden's mental state is. There's no question about that. Without a predicate incident, this situation would be infinitely more manageable. Although I will say they have been hyper-fixated on President Biden's cognitive ability and his age long before this debate. But this was the spark that lit, the fuse. I also think the reluctance of parties to publicly criticize their president, that's not a Democrat thing. Republicans do it too. There is something, I don't know if there's something intimidating about the office or what, but there is a reluctance to attack the president and your party leader when they're in power, and certainly to do it publicly. I think that another part of the issue with respect to how Democrats have handled this is because it's been a half-assed measure. Biden has handled it in a half-assed way. Again, 7 days of silence, then a lackluster interview with George Stephanopoulos. And by the way, kudos to Stephanopoulos, because people want to talk about the liberal media, but it was about that 20 minutes was about one issue. And Stephanopoulos, even though he used to work for President Clinton and is presumably somebody who likes and respects and voted for Biden, he did not let up. He persistently, by every goddamn vector, went after that particular line of inquiry. So he persisted. The other thing is, I think Democrats, the rank and file, like I'm comparing this to how how Republicans handled trying to remove President Nixon. They didn't make a public spectacle over it. They went in force to the White House privately and said, to avoid the public mutiny, get the fuck out. So it was handled privately and quietly and enforced.
I understand, Josiah.
Yeah,
I totally understand that. One, I think you're underselling how much better Democrats look by comparison to the Republicans, because I think when
they do.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say was, I think this kind of a half measure, right? You have some like a half-hearted public mutiny, and apparently some pressure in private, and it's like it's like a mix match here. I think that they would have been better served, having a unified approach one way or another, which is how Republicans were able to.
I get it, but it's a big tent, and there's a lot of people to wrangle. But to Econoboy's point, right? He's saying, comparing that the reluctance to criticize the president. I'd say under normal circumstances, probably yes. We are seeing this is brazen. What's going on here is out in the open rebellion.
Yes.
I don't.
Yes.
The cracks are starting to form.
Yeah,
right?
It is like way more than anyone like the Republicans ever pushed back against Trump. It is the most open revolt that I've ever seen of an incumbent president by its own party.
I think it's not like are the cracks starting to show. Today I feel like was definitely a huge tipping point.
I think in part that's because Trump does have a cult of personality with Republicans, right? Biden doesn't have that with Democrats. Like, I think that's part of the reason why you're starting to see this like increased resonance. Because as Debbie said in the chat, well, Biden's done so much good, and conversely, you could say Trump has done so much bad, right? So obviously, look, should Republicans kick Trump out of their party and never nominate him again? I mean, obviously, yes. We would all agree with that. If the election was Nikki Haley as the Democrat versus Trump as the Republican, I would be a card-carrying member of the Haley gang, okay? Because I would much prefer her to Donald Trump. And obviously, I'd prefer her to be the Republican nominee for various reasons, even though she's more likely to beat Biden than Trump is, right? I would still prefer Haley to be the Republican nominee because the risk to Trump is so great. But at the same time, Biden doesn't have that strong cult of personality. And so I think that that's why you're seeing this where, Biden ultimately, it's not just that he doesn't have the personality, but he doesn't have the, he does not have the personality to, in the following midterm, like actively campaign against Democrats that said he should drop out. Like, you're not going to see like Biden endorse a primary opponent against Nancy Pelosi. And I think that
there's that lack of spite.
Those two things combined is why I don't think, for various reasons, I don't think that, or I think that Democrats are going to be a little bit more likely to come out against this. But at the end of the day, look, it's going to come down to who's willing to put their money where their mouth is, who's willing to say, if Gretchen Whitmer's the candidate, I've got $25 million in a super PAC waiting for her, and who's going to actually put their name out on a convention to get the votes instead of Biden.
The money's stopping, Econoboy. The money is
the reporting is pretty bad with respect to the donors.
No, I'm saying in like a relative sense, right? Who are the big donors that are going to come out and say, I want you to challenge Biden at the convention. I will give you $50 million in a super PAC or something like this.
Biden needs to be convinced. It's the only way.
It's the only way.
It'll be what Clyburn suggested, I think. If like, here's how this could play out. He could do the press conference tomorrow. It could just be okay or bad. There's a meeting at the White House on Friday. And again, I don't think this is like conspiratorial. I think we are in that territory. Like, I feel like we're in that territory right now. And let's, and if it wouldn't shock me if they did it as a public meeting, like doing it, but like not doing it privately, like what Josiah said, like to actually apply pressure to push him aside. And if he actually stepped aside, then I think it would be like what Clyburn is saying, which is that and what George Clooney said in the op-ed today, which is you would do a mini primary, you would get all the whoever's in that pool of, there's a really fantastic bench of Democratic candidates, and you would get them all to sign off on running a positive campaign. So it would have to be something that's like not like super attacking each other. Like, one thing I got to say I'm not worried about is that whatever happens, I do think that Democrats will be united at the end of this. Like, whoever emerges, it seems likely to me. It's like obviously probably going to be Kamala at that point. Like maybe some other people will throw their names in the hat, but she's got the most name recognition. She's got the support of the Congressional Black Caucus. She's got the support of Clyburn. And it's just objectively true that if the party like leapfrogged over the first Black female vice president, that could be disastrous politically. And so
again, to say nothing of the fundraising too, because that war chest goes away if she's not in the presidential slot, and that's been
find a way. I mean,
one thing that I think she's definitely more educated than me, but like I just really disagree. I saw a debate between Rachel Bidikofer, who's like a political scientist, versus Cenk Uygur. A fascinating couple of people to put in a debate against each other. It was like I couldn't believe I was watching it.
Out Cenk.
Yeah, I was like, Rachel Bidikofer's
getting Cenk Uygur right now. This subject. I've studied it. Before every bold to say that before every answer.
Yeah. I'm a political scientist. I've written a book on it. Anyway, so but no, I was like, man, I'm shocked that these are just two. I would never have guessed they would share a debate stage. But what she said in that discussion, which I feel like is very unintuitive, she said, hey, if you replace Biden, there's going to be a lot of Biden voters who are just pissed off about that. And it's like, what Cenk said is like, there's no such thing as Biden voters. Like, that doesn't exist, right? Like, who is gonna say, oh, I've got Harris instead of Biden, so I'm not gonna vote for Harris? Like, what? Who exists that is actually doing that? And you have to weigh that against like the probability of getting more independents. Now, for a number of reasons, I think like if you could divine the most strategic pick, Kamala Harris isn't that. It's obviously Michelle Obama, but Michelle Obama doesn't want to be the Democratic nominee. Kamala Harris probably, presumably would, right? And so she's kind of the best, the least bad option that is like realistic, that I think solves the problems that you guys mentioned, where you're not going to have a bunch of like core members of the primary base, or of the Democratic base, I should say, basically eschewing away the ticket because of Kamala Harris. Can she attract more independents? Well, according to the polling, it seems like it. She's running slightly ahead of Biden. And to be fair, it's not just that we get a new presidential candidate with Kamala Harris. We had a new vice president as well, right? Which I think creates some additional coverage as well.
Yeah,
I actually do buy in.
Sorry, I buy that too. I know what you're going to say.
I'm saying I buy in. Oh, no. I was going to say that there, like, one thing that I do find somewhat compelling, like maybe it's a bit pie in the sky, but George Clooney mentioned it in the op-ed that he wrote. I don't know if you guys read that, but and other people have brought it up too. Even Cenk, like, I don't love Cenk, but maybe he's right about this. But like the idea that you could have this kind of a process, there is like a possibility that could work in Democrats' favor.
I totally agree. That's what I thought you'd say, and I agree. Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah. So like it would start all these eyes would be on this conversation and this, and especially if you could come out of that with like total unity, like everybody who was in part of this mini primary is just enthusiastically behind it. That could actually like make some that like moves things. One thing that's been like really uncharacteristic about this presidential race compared to previous ones, it has been extremely stable in the aggregates. Like the polling has not shifted much at all the whole time. When you look at Hillary versus Trump in 2016, when you look at Obama versus Romney in 2012, when you look at just even 2020, Biden versus Trump, we're talking about like way more volatile. Like it has just been unmovable. And so there is a logic to the idea that people have really cemented in their beliefs about Biden's age. Pollsters have been talking about this possibility for a really long time, but and if we do this process, like, I don't know, I don't want this to be copium. Like, I don't think it's copium. It is possible that this could rejuvenate the entire discussion.
It's not just that it rejuvenates the discussion, it also shifts it away, right? Because like one thing, Josiah, that you said was, well, we have 3 weeks of we're going to have 3 weeks of discussion about, oh, how could the Democrats do this and the age issue, and they just ignored it for so long. Okay, I'll grant you that. Maybe it is 3 weeks of an annoying discussion, but what it's not is 12 weeks of a discussion about how goddamn old President Biden is. And to be fair, look, whether you love him or hate him, disagree or agree, you say, when's the media going to stop about this? The media will stop when the election's over. I do not think we're going to see a day go by. No, honestly, just
there's not
going to be a day that goes by. Yeah. And in part, the reason there's not going to be a day that goes by that the media doesn't comment on this on a regular basis
100%
is because Biden is doing nothing to counter the narrative.
He's making it worse.
Right? He's making it worse, arguably, right? And it's because, like Pisco said, it's a real problem. I don't think he has dementia. But at the end of the day, if you have age-related, cognitive decline or whatever you'd call it, and it makes it to where you have a difficult time speaking, you have a difficult time, thinking as quickly as you used to. I mean, that's just you're not going to be a good public speaker. It's equivalent to like, as unfair as this would be, like, let's say that somebody was deaf and they ran for president, right? Now, people who are deaf often have struggles like speaking, right? Because they're deaf, right? Now, is it fair that the American public sees a deaf
RFK
person?
Jr. You don't even have to go with the deaf example.
Well, no, but would it be fair in some intrinsic sense?
Improve their diction.
Yeah, would it be fair in some intrinsic sense if people look at a deaf person speaking and say, I don't have confidence in this person because they're speaking atypically? No, of course that wouldn't be fair, right? But that's just descriptively what would happen. It's why people with disabilities have trouble running for office in the first place. You see a guy in a wheelchair, it's not necessarily fair, but a lot of people say, I don't think this guy's going to be a strong enough leader because he's in a wheelchair. That's obviously unfair. You see the same thing with Biden in this cognitive decline, right? It's just not going to go away as an issue. And so you might have a bad news cycle because the Democrats are replacing him, but I don't know.
I'd rather defend that than his age, like
and like Hutch said, it's going to refocus the conversation on policy, like Democratic policies versus Republican ones, instead of the crazy con man versus the guy with cognitive decline. That's all we're talking about.
All I'll say is I don't share your optimistic view of the media landscape. I think you all have made a pretty compelling case that there would be something shiny to dangle in front of them that would be at least potentially less damaging and much more manageable than the current narrative. All I will tell you, because this is it's a recurring thesis of my channel, there is a double standard. There is an asymmetry in the media, not just right-wing media, but mainstream media, between Republicans and Democrats. And we have seen it inflame in the Trump era. It just is. I can show you dozens of headlines where a percentage of unemployment rate under Trump is celebrated by Reuters. The same level of unemployment under Biden is given kind of a doomer headline. There is just an asymmetry. It could be because the New York Times, as you say, look at Democrats as protagonists, but they are held to a higher standard. So maybe replacing Biden, which, by the way, I've said from the very beginning,
you're open to it
on my channel. Well, no, long before this, that my gut instinct, before Biden announced that he was running again, was for the president to just commit to being a one-term president, and he could focus on governing, because it was after Afghanistan that his approval rating had not only fallen, but stayed low. I don't think there was any point after September 2021 that Biden ever hit 50% approval rating again, no matter what he did, no matter the breadth of his accomplishments. And I'm not in politics. I'm simply analyzing politics. So I can say a lot of it is because of the media and because voters are fucking irrational. If I genuinely believe that if you swap names out and slap Trump's name in front of Biden's accomplishments, it would be greeted very differently. I do think Trump is given a pass, believe it or not, compared to Biden. So I said before he announced, he should just say he's not running for re-election and let the Democrats sort it out if it's going to be Harris or somebody else. I'm just saying, I don't know what the answer is. I think it's all risky, but I do agree that this idea that it's settled just because he says it's settled, I think we are getting very strong indications to the contrary.
And I think for me, it's kind of it's not a fear of missing out. I don't know what the exact word for this would be. If Biden is the candidate and he loses, it's the biggest what if in American political history. It's the biggest what if in American political history. And at the very least, look, if Newsom's the candidate, if Kamala's the candidate with some other vice presidential pick, I can at least say, look, we tried our best to put our best foot forward. Obviously, it wasn't optimal because of how short notice it was. But at the very least, if Kamala is the candidate and she loses, well, I'm confident she probably wouldn't have done worse than Biden, right? Like we tried our best. Like what Biden said, we really did try our best here, right? And for various reasons, it just wasn't going to happen. But if Biden's the candidate and he loses, I don't know if I could live with it is such a permanent criticism of the entire Democratic establishment. If Biden's the candidate and he ends up losing, delegates, why didn't you switch him out of the convention? Why didn't you have this conversation earlier? Why weren't you more public about it? Why weren't you more confrontational about it? Now we have to deal with 4 years of potentially fascist takeover of the United States, right?
Reportedly, Schumer, according to the Axios article today, that's another part of the story too, is that Axios ran an article about how Schumer behind the scenes for like months now has been saying that he was open to replacing Biden. And one of the most telling parts of that article was they declined to comment. They didn't deny it, which to me, that was like a clear, open, like what Pisco was saying, open revolt. But one thing that Schumer was saying in that article was one of the benefits of doing the first debate in June is that if it goes bad, we actually have some time to
you gave yourself an emergency lever. You gave it for when there's an emergency. And maybe you thought some other reason to have it, to maybe the whole rationale was that, this was meant. You guys ever watch Apollo 13? You guys know what happened there? That they used as a life craft the moon, whatever they did that had the extra oxygen or whatever. This is we have the tools. By some miracle, some dumbass or some smart person decided to have this debate when they did. We have the lunar module. It's there. It can save us. And I don't say this lightly because, again, I think Biden has been an effective president. But both of these groups, the Democrats, which are, I think, the vast majority of elected Democrats. That's my personal belief, is that behind the scenes and starting to be very open about it, the vast majority of Democratic elected officials are in favor of ditching Biden. That's just my opinion. Yep. Both of these groups, those people and Biden, it's a game of chicken. They can both end the election because Biden can just choose, fuck all you guys, I'm going to stay. And then we think that his chances are very low. I don't think it's impossible he could win, but I think they're very low. Or the Democrats could do so much damage to him that, what's going to be left? Imagine if Obama came out and said, yeah, Joe, I think you need to step down. Can you imagine what that would mean if he would
step down? He would step down. There was not.
There's a level of damage here, and it's a game of chicken. And I think that it's possible lethal damage has already been done. I think it's possible.
Well, look, I mean,
Pelosi put the line in the sand. Pelosi in the interview said, "Well, let's see how he does in the NATO thing." And so, like, that's tomorrow.
Even if he kills it, right? That's why it's so fake. And I think Hutch, I don't think that you're fooled, but yeah.
No, I'm not. I'm not saying that she's. My sense is that it seemed like she kind of already made up her mind, and 100%. She was kind of gently trying to nudge him. But I think what she was saying, what I'm saying is that I think after the NATO speech tomorrow, I think there's a decent chance we are going to see significant movement.
Yeah.
And really, in some ways, this has been kind of like a process for me to like come to this, like, because there's a lot of it's a lot of information, right? But like an okay speech is not going to cut it, and I don't think he's capable of giving better than an okay speech.
An amazing speech.
So it's not about what I mean, an amazing speech might cut it, but like it's not about what I want. It's not about like the issues. None of that is like I'm just reading the fucking tea leaves. And to me, it seems pretty obvious that they're teeing something up here.
For what it's worth, I think if the president remains the candidate, and if we win in November, and again, all of these things, the more you go down the if train, these things are increasingly unlikely. It will be in spite of the narrative around his age. That's not going away. I mean, my God, there was a story the other day about there was like a doctor, a physician, according to the White House medical logs, who visited 10 times. And it turns out he's a Parkinson's specialist. And it eventually came out that he was there attending to other patients at the White House, had nothing to do with Biden, but it in and of itself was a whole media story. And as a matter of fact, there were clips that went viral because of exchanges between otherwise pretty patient, like, my God, it was Ed O'Keefe from CBS. Like, this guy is as mild as it gets, and he is like frothing at the mouth at Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary. Yeah. That is where, again, I think
worst
the
job in the world right now. But
say what?
Worst job in the world right now.
No doubt. And she was never, in my opinion, as good as Jen Psaki in the first place. But yeah, I mean, there's
look at
nobody.
Psaki, Josiah. Look at Psaki, and I know this is. I'm phrasing it like it's a intervention, and you don't know the things I'm telling you, so I'm sorry for
doing this. Come to terms with the truth, Josiah.
What are you talking? What are my only truth is I don't want to contribute to the media uproar. That's it.
I get it.
That's it. Everything you're saying, believe it or not, Hutch was the one last week who was on the riding with Biden thing.
But that's why I appreciate Hutch, because he is in real time honestly reacting the way I think that I reacted, and maybe I did a little quicker, but that's not because I'm whatever. That debate did surprise me, and as I thought about it and ruminated on more, I went through those kind of like no, and I rejected. I'm like, this is stupid. I went through those very same things, and seeing Hutch in real time do it and be so honest about it and open about it, it's refreshing for me to see, because I think it reflects a lot of what's happening in this internal Democratic coup, and I can't call it anything else, because that's what it is. It's go ahead.
Ooh, somebody in chat just pointed something out. Let me ask you this. Okay, the challenge for the president to take the cognitive test.
Why wouldn't you take it?
Do any of you agree? That even if Biden took it and passed, it doesn't matter? Because that's my position.
I don't think it would help at all.
I think it would. It would help, but it would be. I think it would be marginal. To be fair, it might depend on how it was done. Like, for instance, if he took it, like if he literally took it on video, right? Like video, this is him taking the cognitive test. And let's say he just 100%ed it, like completely perfectly fucking says the alphabet backwards without a skit, just like everything he needs to do. I think that would help. The issue though, however, is that they're not going to do that. And what they're going to do is that even if he does do it, they're going to do some private meeting between him and a doctor. The doctor's going to come out and say, yes, technically he passed. They're not going to release the exact details. And then the media is going to have exactly enough to maintain this narrative.
Or he
doesn't pass. Or he doesn't pass, right? And like, but the thing is, I think...
then it's literally What? Let's go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm with chat. Like I think chat's keeping it real. Chat's like even in your hypothetical where it's done on a fucking video, I don't think it moves the needle at all.
I agree with chat.
I think you
No.
underestimate how much the media is dug in on this. I don't think there is anything.
It's not the media, Josiah. This is copium. I'm sorry. I love you.
No. What did I just say? I said
don't know. You
if
said
he
media,
took
and
the
I went.
test, if he took the test and passed,
Yeah.
would it not disprove what the media has been suggesting?
No.
What do you mean no?
If he took a Parkinson's test, what are you suggesting?
If he took, it could be whatever. Let's just say any question regarding cognitive fitness to preclude whether to determine.
They would just say that the doctor was biased or something. Like nobody.
Exactly. Hush. No. Precisely. That's what I'm saying. I think Pisco lives in a world like, even if Biden really isn't cognitively impaired and we can find a way to objectively prove it, I think Pisco thinks the media would swallow it and say, you know what, we were wrong. Let's move on.
No. What I'm saying is the media is your last concern. I think the concern is broader than the media. It's the media, it's donors, and it's the voters. And I think that it's like the Trump trying to blame everything on, well, we're testing so much. Why we only have these cases because we're testing so much. The problem isn't the testing, bro. And maybe the media, I agree, they're exacerbating it, but they're also performing a vital function if you believe that this is an emergency situation, right? Like if you believe this is an emergency situation, all the levers that the pressure that's being applied by Congress doesn't work unless the media is there, right? It doesn't work. The pressure that's being applied by Senate, the only reason they're making these statements is because Biden is an old man and he's being stubborn. And it doesn't work unless you have the media. Otherwise, there's no leverage. And so you can be mad at the media, but if you're in favor of, and I'm not saying you are, but if anyone's in favor of replacing Biden, the media is essential because that's where these people are getting their leverage.
I can agree with some, like I can obviously agree with some of, or even all of like Josiah's criticisms of the media. I don't think the media is the reason why the dam really, in my opinion, broke today. I think it was the internal polls. Yeah. I think it was what the voters were telling Democratic pollsters, and those polls got leaked, and they were fucking brutal.
And they're scared they're going to lose their jobs.
Not just for Biden, but for down ballot candidates. Yep. And I think that was ultimately the thing that like prompted Pelosi to do what she did, and Schumer to do what he did.
Wait a minute. I'm sorry. With respect to the polls, you don't think that? I guess I was factoring in the idea that the media would be influencing how people respond to polls. Don't you think?
No, because polls are predictive, and the copium about it not being predictive is copium. I believe.
What do you mean polls
are? Polls are predictive. People who say polls are like you can't
snapshots in time.
Snapshots in time. Yes,
I hear pollsters say that, but what I'm saying is, are you? I don't think that the Hutch's citation of the polls as something separate from the media. I think they're all related. Like this idea that you all don't think that the media simply reflects public interest, right? It also shapes it. You agree?
No, yes. What I'm saying is that it's not just it's the media coverage. It's people talking with each other at the dinner table and at their jobs, and it's on social media, and it's the conversations that the politicians were having with each other, and it's all of it. It's all of it. But it's not just the media. I think is what Pisco's trying to say.
Yeah, but Josiah has right. These are mutually reinforcing, and
yes,
that's 100% true. But the thing is, what's making it mutually reinforcing is there's no like end game in sight. Even if you could control the media, Josiah, and let's just say the liberal media, because I don't think you would like try to control the conservative media. Even if you could control all of the liberal establishment that you think are being unfair to Biden, it wouldn't change the fundamentals. You would remove one area of potential weakness, but it would reinforce itself in these other ways. And I think the reason Hutch cited the internal polls is precisely because they don't always release those polls. And in fact, they usually don't. And there have been leaks of internal polls, which are just as much attacks on Biden as are these statements like, when Biden has already made his decision, and then you say, well, we're going to have to see what he decides. Guys, I don't know.
I agree. I'm just saying that these things are inextricably linked. And my point was about the test was that even if you could disprove the thesis of the media, which is that Biden is mentally unfit for office. If he could give 10 great speeches, if he could in a magic fantasy world just completely reverse course in terms of his performance, if he could sit down on screen and take a cognitive test, I still don't think it would change hearts and minds.
It would be uphill. Yes.
It wouldn't erase the image. Oh, go ahead, Econo Boy. You haven't spoken in a while.
Yeah. I was just going to say, like, the issue that I find is that I just don't know what the Democrats are really supposed to do. Like, because again, Biden has said he's not dropping out. He's just not going to do it, right? He's released letters to that effect. He said it privately. One of the problems is his family's gassing him up. That's what's been reported as well. You got people like Hunter Biden and Jill Biden, who I don't think are like fundamentally horrible people or anything like that. But for various reasons, it's just only natural. You're going to want your dad to fucking be the president, right? Like, understandably, right? So, like, almost probably no matter what the case is, whether it's just like cool or there's some favors associated with it, there's some status associated with it, whatever.
Maybe he's going to want your dad. Pardon.
Hunter Biden has no place in the White House.
It's not
shameful
necessarily
that Joe Biden is bringing him in to be. Now, one thing is asking him for his take on like what it means for the family. That there can be a role for Hunter Biden there. But what's being reported, and assuming it's true, that he is taking like a significant role in the decision, is indicative that Joe Biden is doing something shameful and wrong.
Well, it's just that he's. I don't know if it's shameful or wrong because I think what Biden, his view seems to be that this is a very personal decision. He wants to listen to his family first. Obviously, I think that that's bad. I just don't know if it's like
personal.
Necessarily shameful. Yeah. I don't know if it's necessarily like shameful or wrong or anything like that. But at the end of the day, that's who he's listening to. They're gassing him up. It doesn't seem like he's gonna get out. And so it's like what's Kamala supposed to do? She's supposed to back channel while she's officially the vice presidential candidate,
she has
and then
to be completely loyal.
And then like, well, yeah, exactly. And then like surprise Joe Biden with like with a convention fight and win it somehow. Like that's not the way that this is going to happen. Right. But the thing is, that's the only way that this will happen because Biden is stubborn. He's not going to drop out. Like, I just don't think that that'll happen. Like what's the path to getting him to drop out essentially? Right.
I mean, it's not, it doesn't make me feel good to say it, but or imagine it, because the whole thing just sucks. But if Jeffries, Schumer, and Pelosi, and Pisco mentioned Obama, I don't know how much he would participate. But even if it was just those three, if they came out and said, for the good of the country, we want him to step aside, he would not. He would step aside.
Chances.
He would. Yeah. He would step aside. It would just. He would have no choice but to step aside.
And they're warning we're willing to do it. They're saying it.
I think
very clearly, I feel like they're saying that. Yeah.
If you combine that as well with like if somebody like Bloomberg was like, I'll throw $100 million into the race or something like that, like just to ensure that money's not a problem or something like that, like which is Bloomberg's known to do.
It won't be a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
The funnels will come on as soon as you have one of these.
No, Pisco, I know, but I'm saying Hutch is correct that I think a lot of it is about public commitments to saying, I want this guy to drop out. Like it's not enough for Mark Warner and a bunch of other senators to get together and be like, Mr. President, behind closed doors, we really think you should drop out. It's like, guys, you gotta
they drew straws. It's leak. It's drip.
But the drip. I think that's what I'm saying. Going all the way back to, again, just assuming that Biden dropping out is best case scenario for Democrats in this election. Just granting the premise. Mm-hmm. I don't know if this is what you're saying, Pisco. Obviously, it is drip. Do you think that that's the approach? I think it's an awful approach.
Well, it's leading to something.
Got to come out at some point.
I think there's a crescendo happening. I think we're living in a crescendo, and it's upward, and it's not getting better, and it's accelerating. And these statements of official support, they have to do that because they're signaling. But it's all this kind of intricate little dance. And when you send out Mark Warner, we're gonna have a meeting. Oh, maybe not. And we send one guy in a swing state. He'll be the first one to take the punch. AOC will. We're not gonna put the very left-wing people's fingerprints on the trigger. It's gonna it has to seem like it's like these kinds of things. They're tactics. They're outmaneuvering each other, and
I don't know.
I think that's what's happening, and
it's so unpredictable.
I think right now, if this is them trying to outmaneuver Biden, I don't think it's working at all. I think the time for drip is done. If they want Biden out, then I agree. It's going to have to be Schumer. It's going to have to be Jeffries. It's going to have
That's
to
on the
be
table.
Pelosi.
No, but today was way more than a drip, though. Today was way more than a drip. Today was,
and
like
it also can't be
across.
2 weeks from now. I think it's going to have to be soon, where they go to him in private and they pull a Nixon. They say, "Listen, Mr. President, you're done. You're done. We've tried to give you hints, but we're short on time. You're done. If you don't say that you'll drop out, then in 2 hours, we're going across the street to the Capitol to a press conference." Do we all agree that the drip has to stop soon, and you just like
Yes.
turn on the fucking
Yes.
hose? There you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah. I just don't think that. I literally don't know. I'm not sure if Biden would even listen to that. I don't know. I mean, because it just seems like he is.
Then he
really
is unfit.
Well, it's just here's the problem is that you have a portion of, sort of like let's say detached Democrats, like from directly the campaign, like someone like AOC coming out and saying like, "Look, Biden's the nominee. We got to stop with all this nonsense," or whatever, right? Which is sort of framed as like a ringing endorsement or whatever, which I don't know what it is, but like that's what she says. But then you've got people like somebody mentioned, one of you guys mentioned JB Pritzker. It's like you got a lot of Democratic insiders that are literally just like part of the Biden campaign, right? Who,
It's their job. Yeah.
Right, exactly, right. And to what extent it's unfortunately true that there's probably a lot of Democrats who, in their minds, like JB Pritzker might be an example of this, unfortunately, right? And I don't know if that's the case, obviously. This is just a hypothetical where it's like, look, with Biden, I'm kind of a man on the inside, right? Whereas if we get some other nominee, I don't know how much access I'm going to have, right?
I think Democratic governors will always have access to a Democratic president because they're necessary. That's like the first line of defense.
It's a matter of degrees, though,
But I
right?
agree with
Like,
I agree with the point there, which is it's not all one incentive. There are multiple layers of incentive things here that affect different Democratic stakeholders differently. The actual candidates themselves, the people who are proposed as candidates, they can't say the kinds of things that even like Clyburn are saying, right? They have to maintain their posture. But what Econoboy is saying is absolutely true. People who have maybe less autonomy on their own, Joe Biden is their money, right? It's their person, right? Like I understand that, but even in spite of that, I am impressed at the level of people putting party and therefore country in this respect. The election results are related to the benefit of the country in this case. They're putting the country first, and there's his own insiders, right? Senior people that have been with him since he's been the vice president, right? So like they could not have a stronger connection. The same thing with some of the donors. So I agree that there's multiple layers of incentives, and it could explain some of the different statements and different kind of responses. But there's in general, my take is an increase and uniformity in the response.
A good example of this, a really good example of like how the tide has turned, is Richie Torres. He put out a statement on Monday where he was like, listen, regardless of anything that happens, we should be having these discussions in private. It's not helpful, blah, blah, blah. And then he put out a statement 2 days later today that was way different. That was like, we need to really consider the gravity of this moment. So talk about a 180. So like when I saw that, I was like, okay, there are very serious discussions that are happening in the House caucus tonight. That weren't happening 2 days ago.
I think
I've noticed some people in chat that are like, I saw somebody call us like bedwetters or whatever. This has nothing to do with like, this has nothing to do with personal preference. It's just about like looking at what's happening. And I don't know about you, the rest of the panel, but I believe that it is possible that we could, like, if the party wanted to do that we could replace Biden and win in November. I don't think that's a hopeless. 100%. I don't think that's a hopeless thing. It's not about like, it's not about what the best decision is, because to be honest with you, there are no great decisions right now. Like, it's not a good thing to have to like smash this glass and consider doing that. But the tides are turning.
This is a purely descriptive and strategic conversation, right? This isn't like we hate. I mean, we have to say. I don't know why there's so many mouth breathers in the chat that can't get this. Like in the first time we talked about this, you had the same people that were like, "Why you guys hate Biden so much?" And oh my goodness, you're hurting the cause. It's like, guys, we're having a strategic discussion. Like, it's not that we hate. Joe Biden. Like
he's my favorite president in my lifetime, like by far.
He's
like,
my favorite.
Right? No. Listen. I'm gonna play the devil's. The bedwetters are from my channel more than likely. And what it is, because they fight with me a lot too. Like when I quote the polls in my videos, even prior to the debate, when I would reference that, Biden is down in aggregate, or a recent poll that had Biden up. Again, this was prior to the debate. I'd get a lot of comments saying you need to ignore the polls. And I would always respond in my next video, hey, by the way, to those of you asking me to ignore the polls, the answer is no, because even President Biden, his campaign pays attention to polls. They have internal polls. They see the value of polls, even if, because I disagree with Pisco, I don't think that polls are necessarily predictive, but they are still important because you still want to take measurement of things as they are so you can plan your future trajectory. I will say again, in somewhat defense of the bedwetters, what they're probably thinking is next week's conversation going to be about Biden's mental fitness, and the week after that, and the week after that?
And the answer is yes.
So if you have it your way, yes. Eventually, I'll probably want to talk about the other.
Whether I could shut up about it, and if
but
go ahead.
Well, no, but Pisco, it goes back to again that tension is, and this is, you can say this is partisan brain all you want, but I genuinely believe that even if we stick with President Biden, it's still a better choice for the country. 100%. You say it is too, and this is always my challenge to people. Other political commentators, if that's true, then that must be reflected in your coverage. This goes back to my beef with the media. If the media, as I imagine many journalists do, recognize that Trump is a greater threat to democracy, then I'm sorry, that must be reflected in your fucking coverage. Maybe not at this specific moment, but if we can again go through examples of how Biden's mistakes, even prior to this debate, get pound for pound more coverage than Trump's because the media feel. Don Lemon, when I interviewed, I'll pull the Don Lemon card. I interviewed Don Lemon. A media. You
did. That's
yes,
crazy, guys.
So and because Don Lemon agrees with me, I win this debate. Don Lemon said he worked at CNN, there was pressure to create this balance, this false equivalence between the two sides, even when there clearly wasn't. So my point is, eventually, we have to pick a fucking path, and then 100% of the focus has to be on Republicans.
Well, I think that at the very least, the line at which we have to do that is definitely after the convention. Like, obviously, it's the case that, look, if the convention's just happened, we can't be talking about Biden being too old. Like, at a certain point, it has to be a 90-degree turn, positive messaging on the platform, the comparison between the two candidates. And obviously, it's a very clean comparison because you got the immediate previous president versus the current president. If that's the case, Biden's nominee, right? It's just that, I don't know. I think, what do we have? 5 weeks or something like that until the convention. Yep. I think that leading up to that, of course, I think it's appropriate to have these kind of conversations. But anyway, if you guys want to change topics, the GOP did release their platform. So, we could talk about that.
On that in a second. I do think it's important, though, especially for Pisco and Hutch to especially Hutch, I think, who is kind of like in this transformative moment, right? Like he's moved a bit from where he was last week. I think it's kind of good for you to give your, where are you at right now after this conversation, after everything that's happened today?
What are the odds that
Biden? He's 100% certain. I know it. He knows that the best.
No, I wouldn't say 100%, but I like, if you would have asked me yesterday before, because I literally yesterday I was like, oh, it looks like he weathered the storm. Like, there's not a lot of calls. It's just so much change literally in the last 24 hours. I think there's like 75-80% chance that he will be pressured to step aside. And
no, but that's always asked me. How sure are you that that's the right move? And I think that you're going to be a 90-95% chance sure that you're the right move.
I mean, I will say that I'm shifting. I'm shifting because I'm just asking myself questions, and there's just no good answers to the questions.
Let me take the pressure off you just for a second, because I'm going to put the pressure on Josiah. Josiah, if you were a Democratic congressman right now, what would you be doing?
Oh, I'd definitely be having conversations with the president. My thing is,
that tells you all you need to know.
Oh no, the frustrating thing for me, it goes back to the final answer that he gave to George Stephanopoulos, which was the recalcitrance that he exuded really disturbed me. It made me very uncomfortable, the total lack of concern that he had. And I know a lot of people are probably thinking, well, he's just trying to project strength. it came off the exact opposite to me. Like what I wanted to hear President Biden say, and I actually said this on Twitter before the conversation or before his interview, is if the president acknowledges that he screwed up and that there are serious concerns, the concerns are valid, and that he has an obligation to prove to the American people that he is fit to run against Trump and that it's not about him and he exists only as a vector for the rest of us, that he is unimportant. He is nothing except as a public, like basically if he took it seriously and instead he took the exact opposite approach, to me, it came off like it's all about me and my good effort. And I did so well in round 1. I am owed a round 2. It was so tone deaf. And it freaked me the fuck out.
And something he said didn't make any sense too, because he was like, "Yeah, the pollsters said I couldn't beat Trump in 2020," and it was like, "No, you were up like 8 points in the aggregate the entire race." Like, I don't know what it just.
Right.
I really did not like that Stephanopoulos interview, and
and the stuff about like trying to frame
chat.
it as like I was gonna say, trying to frame it as well as like it's me versus the elites. It's like, dude, what are you talking about, right? Like, first of all, just be clear. If you were Bernie Sanders saying that, maybe I'd believe you. But like Biden, come on. You've been a member of establishment Democratic politics for your whole fucking career, which is 50 years long at this point. The elites aren't against you. They just genuinely have a lack of faith.
Yeah.
So can I just chat real quick? Just said, he acknowledged he screwed up 3 times. You didn't hear the rest of my statement.
Yeah.
He needed to acknowledge that he screwed up, admit that the concerns are valid, not brush them aside, not that it's merely donors and the elite, and that he has an obligation to prove himself. He didn't say those things. He said he screwed up. Then he passed it off as a concerns of the elite and donors and that everyday Americans are with him. That's my problem. He should have said, George, yeah, I screwed up.
But he can't say that because I'm sorry, I'm blowing up, and I know Hutch gets to get in, but he can't say that, right? Like, imagine you were like, yeah, these are valid concerns that I'm psychologically damaged. How can you be honest
wait a
about
minute,
that?
Wait a minute. No. You could phrase it. I'm paraphrasing here. He could say, George, listen, after that disastrous performance, I understand why people have lost confidence in me. It was so bad, George, when you asked me earlier, did I watch the debate? The truth is I started to watch it and then I had to shut it off because it was so disastrous. And I understand that people are concerned, and I have an obligation if I choose to remain the candidate, which is what I'm trying to do. I want to be the candidate. I think I'm the best person to defeat Donald Trump. I have an obligation to prove it, not merely tell you. I have to get out there. I'm going to be taking more interviews. I am taking what everyone says seriously. For those of you worried that I'm in an echo chamber, not listening to my critics and taking their words into consideration, I am not doing that.
He already said that, though. I mean, he said that months ago. He said that months ago. He said, watch me.
Yeah, that's the problem.
And that's the problem.
That's not it. Like, no, I'm saying what would have made me feel better is him saying something like that. Him saying, watch me. He doesn't even validate his critics' views. He's basically saying, oh, you guys are poo-poo, just watch me. And then you're right, we did. So yes, if I were congressman,
if he wins, though, if Biden remains the candidate and wins, he deserves to go to 100 million households and directly give all of us the middle finger if he does actually end up winning.
I
guess
for sure, but
it's not about justice and like the right thing. It's not about the issues. It's not even about Trump anymore. Like that's like it's just it's about this thing that you can either acknowledge it or you can't, but it's just an unavoidable thing.
And it's how he says it too. Like, there's one thing, the message is 80%. How you deliver a message is 80% of it. So like, if he said, watch me, if he said it like definitively and people believed it and he looked at the camera and said, watch me, I can do that. Or if he said essentially what you said, Josiah, in the way you said it, no problem. It's really not about it's 30% about his words. It's 70% about how he's acting in body language. I just think that people see him and it doesn't really matter what he says.
Yeah. Also, lack of a positive. Like, one thing that Bernie Sanders did in one of his recent interviews was he tried to at the very least tried to refocus the conversation on policy and the comparisons to Donald Trump. I think Biden's done a little bit of that with the comparisons to Donald Trump, but like I just something I said last week that I'll say this week as well, and it's not necessarily to do with Biden as well. I feel like in general the messaging from the Biden campaign has been so lacking in policy that it's kind of disconcerting. It's like, look, at a certain point, I get it. Like, Donald Trump, he's not great. pretty scary guy to elect president, especially given these Supreme Court decisions. But I need to know at least vaguely what you're going to do as a policy in office. I understand, codifying Roe v. Wade was something you guys mentioned last week, which, by the way, they're not going to do. Just to be clear, I don't think that's going to happen if the Democrats have a united government. But it's like, give me something else. Like,
they can't. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just both of you. Why do you don't think they?
Well, we already discussed this. I don't think they have the votes to scrap the filibuster. I just don't. I think that you probably still.
Yep.
You probably still have
get rid of the filibuster.
You probably still have 6 or 7 like institutionalist Democrats that are afraid of the wild, volatile swings if they get rid of it. And
Yep. Yeah, 100%.
So you think the problem would be in the Senate then, having an insufficient number of votes?
Yeah, they could pass. They already passed a bill in the House to codify Roe, so that's not an issue.
Yeah.
I mean, and you had Manchin and Sinema coming out and saying they were against the filibuster,
right? And they're going to be gone.
I guarantee you. But I guarantee you there were probably like 5 or 6 other Dem senators that had the same belief privately, but didn't want to be on the record talking about it.
They were okay with Manchin and Sinema getting all the shit, but I think that if you had a 50-50 Senate that included Kamala as the vice president, and then 50 Democrats obviously in the Senate as well. I think that you just have you'd have Chris Coons come out, or you'd have like John Tester, or something. You'd have one of these other guys. 100%. 100%. Yeah.
Man, I'm just trying to think what the backlash really quick, from that would be.
No, Josiah, my evidence for this is that there was specifically an up-down vote, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong about this, on including a $15 minimum wage as part of the budget. And what you saw wasn't just Manchin and Sinema voting against it. What you saw was a handful of other Democrats voting against it as well, right? And that put the writing on the wall, which is like, look, Manchin and Sinema are getting all the shit because obviously they're like the ones more openly saying they're against the Biden administration on this. But I think for sure they're not going to codify Roe v. Wade. They're not going to do election reform. They're not going to do any of these things. If there's
wait a minute. So I take your point that it's entirely possible that people would use, Manchin and Sinema just reputationally like to be seen as gadflies. I mean, Manchin, of course, being in West Virginia and Sinema for various reasons, wanted to be seen as, high profile gadflies to the president on certain issues. But I don't think you can compare codifying Roe to $15 minimum wage. I mean, one is much more central to the the Democratic Party's success and their platform than the other. I mean, I'm not ruling it out. I'm just imagining, imagine senators publicly refusing to codify Roe when abortion, even on referenda in deep red states, has just cleaned house. Kansas, Kentucky, Ohio.
Yep.
I'm just trying to imagine the backlash. Like, imagine Sherrod Brown, senator of Ohio, refusing to break the filibuster to codify Roe, even though abortion referenda in Ohio did very well. Like, I don't know how he'd survive that.
Sherrod's an open progressive, though. I don't think that he would be the one. I think it'd be one of these guys you don't hear about very often, like maybe a Chris Coons or one of these kind of type guys. I just don't. And here's the thing: I deeply hope that you're correct, Josiah, that like the Democrats finally get rid of this ridiculous nonsense called the filibuster, and they actually start passing good progressive things that people want, like codifying Roe v. Wade, like election reform, like statehood for Puerto Rico and DC and all these other things that we think would probably be good ideas. I just don't think they're going to do it.
I mean, I'm thinking maybe John Tester, like Montana. I'm trying to think like who would, and what would their rationale be?
Here's what their rationale would be, Josiah. They'd say, if we get rid of the filibuster and pass Roe v. Wade, the Republicans will come in and do a national abortion ban. That's why I don't want to get rid of the filibuster. That's what they'll say. Right. And
technically they'd be right.
Technically, they could be right. But the issue, again, the issue is like, it's like, let the Republicans actually pass a national abortion ban. Let's see how that works out for them. I just don't think that they would have the electoral will to do it. And to be fair, I think that in a Republican, like in a marginal Republican Senate, I think you would have people like Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins come out and say, and because I think they're actually on the record as saying like, we would never support a national abortion ban. We just wouldn't do it, right? That we support Roe v. Wade, right? And I think that that's they're the as much as we love them, they're the Manchin and Sinemas of the Republican Party, and that's to a great degree what you saw when Trump was in office. When they had a slim majority in the Senate, they were voting against judicial nominees and things like that as well. The difference was that they had 52 senators, not just a bare majority of 50. But I really hope you're right, Josiah, that Democrats really grow some and decide to get rid of the filibuster. Unfortunately, though, I don't know. They haven't given me a lot of faith. Yeah,
to be clear, same. I'm on the same page. I mean, now I'm curious because you guys asked me, but like, what odds do you guys give? Just going back to the Biden thing, like, what odds do you guys give that he will be pressured to step aside?
I give the odds that he'd be pressured at 100% because he's already being pressured. Now,
successfully, I mean.
No, he's pressured to step aside.
Okay, if the odds that he actually steps aside, I put at 5%. I think it's very not going to happen. I think he's proven to be so stubborn on this issue. Look, at the end of the day, if there was a thing that would convince Biden to drop out of this race, it would have already happened. I don't know. It just seems like that would probably.
I think it's 79% chance.
I don't know. I feel like we're in uncharted territory with Biden. He's behaving in ways, in terms of like his recalcitrance, in a way that I just simply don't recall. Certainly not during his time as president, senator, or vice president. So I don't know. And the fact we don't know that they've played the nuke card again, getting Clyburn, Schumer, Jeffries, and Pelosi to go there in private. So I don't have enough to make an informed decision. But I don't know. It seems like it keeps going back and forth in the sense like you have these progressive, you have AOC and Bernie Sanders, Ilhan Omar, coming out and saying, yeah, we're riding with Biden. And then you hear another report saying not just about what's going on in private, but also that the donors are starting to like cut off the tap. I don't know. I really don't.
I think the highest chance of Biden actually not being the nominee is basically actually kicking him out at the convention. I don't know what could convince him to actually make. The Democrats seem to be leaving it up to Biden, and he just seems to be saying, look, he said it in his letter, challenge me at the convention. That's what he said in his letter, right?
Yeah, but that would be the worst. That would be the worst.
Yeah, it won't happen because they're all legally obligated to vote for him. In a lot of this, not all of them necessarily, but like some, I actually think they are bound to him under the Democratic rules.
I don't know how that works.
And in some states, it's actually a crime to not vote for him in the first ballot. So yeah, I think that him saying challenge me at the convention is just like another stupid thing to say. I love Biden. I think I agree with everyone. He's been the best president in my lifetime for sure. He's been better president than Obama and better president certainly than Trump or Bush or, I was very young for Clinton. Yeah. But I would agree in the historical record, better than Clinton. I don't think Clinton was a very good president at all. And so, yeah, it's tough for me to be advocating my favorite president in my lifetime that he should not run again. That's tough for me, but I do it because it's more than that. It's about us. It's not about him and his ego. It's not about him and his kids and his children and his wife. It's not a personal decision. It's a decision about all of our children's and wives and spouses and friends and our values in our society. And it is an existential crisis. And so,
that's exactly how Michael Bennett framed. Did you guys watch the interview? He was the first senator. It's like he put it the exact same way, and it was a compelling argument. What he was laying out he said the exact same thing basically.
Yeah, I posted a meme of the meme of Wesley Snipes like shooting the guy but crying, right? And it's like this is how I feel talking about the Biden campaign. Like this is actually it is sad. It is sad because what we're saying. It is sad because what we're saying is not that Biden is a bad guy and that he's not the best candidate in an ideal world. What we're saying is he doesn't have the capabilities of being the best candidate, right? And that's a very sad thing to recognize, obviously. But we, obviously we love Biden, but
it anyway. Just, but I'll continue. I have no problem like justifying my support for Biden. It does suck. Like every time he does a press conference now, I'm just sitting here like, oh shit, like that sucks. Yeah. Like I am fond of him. I think he's done a really good job. I'm grateful that he took us away from Trump. I am really ready to like back a Democratic president where I don't need to worry about that stuff.
If we have a younger nominee, I mean, one thing that people are talking about is that there's every chance in the world that Trump's cognitive decline becomes a much more mainstream issue because you've got
his biggest strength becomes his biggest weakness.
You've got videos of Trump what was the bizarre clip of him saying and like he just like completely trails off like total cognition.
Man, I don't know. I'm so fucking cynical on that. I think it by definition would get more coverage, but probably not the coverage it deserves. I mean, this has been again a hill I've been dying on for 8 months now, which is the polls have consistently shown. The polls have consistently shown a majority of Americans, anywhere from 50 to 65%, think that Trump is mentally unfit to be president. But if you look at the number of op-eds, editorials, and exposés describing the two candidates, Media Matters did this exhaustive survey. It is staggering even before the debate.
Yeah. Only
Even
alternative
before the
media,
debate.
like, David Pakman, it's only alternative media that's giving a lot of coverage to Trump's cognitive issues. Because again, I mean, the same thing you can say about Biden, you can say about Trump. Look at a video of Trump talking in the 1980s, night and day. Trump was a dumbass. Trump's always been an idiot, just to be clear. He's always been an idiot. He's always been a dumbass. But video of him talking in the 1980s, video of him talking today, night and day in terms of coherence. Like, it's an unbelievable difference.
You don't even have to go that far back. Go watch a Conan O'Brien interview with Trump from 2005 or even 2014, 2012. Yeah, his verbal agility and his vocabulary. I mean, these things have shrank dramatically. There's no question about it.
He's never been a poet, but
no, but also again, like Rex, his fucking Secretary of State literally called the guy, quote, a fucking moron, and like. Anthony Scaramucci just said it amazingly. He's like, there are 40 of us who are cabinet or senior staff who either have explicitly said we're voting for somebody else or endorsing somebody else, or we've not endorsed him. He's like, imagine 40 executives of a car company not endorsing a fucking car that we made. Nobody would buy the car.
Which is exactly why they're trying to deflect the story to, well, now it's about, well, like, shame on the Democrats for trying to hide this. They should have known. It's actually much worse that like nearly 4 dozen former Trump cabinet officials say he's unfit. That's way worse.
Yes, it's worse, but I think that the White House has been deceptive with us, and I resent it. And I think that even these people
I didn't know, you spoke too fast, Piece.
Oh, sorry. I resent that the White House appears to have been lying to us and hiding aspects of how bad he was.
But have there been any like previous Biden cabinet members that said he's not fit to serve? Like that.
I don't know if they've said it in such terms, but it's clear that the level of general knowledge about the extent and severity of the decline was hidden, and I think that's true. Like, I was shocked about how bad, like, because we can all have those moments where we see him in a press conference and we can explain it away and we can do this and like, oh, we caught on a bad time. But what we saw that night, you couldn't, because that was a night they were preparing for specifically for that issue. You couldn't deny it anymore. And now everyone's coming out of the woodwork and saying, actually, we've been very, very concerned this whole time for the last like year and a half. Like, he was great the first 2 years. And then after that, like since then, it's been night and day. And that is concerning to me. And it's concerning because it sounds like it's accelerating. And he sounds more unhinged and more like Trump every passing day.
I don't think that, how do I put this? Like, there's a difference between Biden now and Biden 4 years ago, right?
Yes.
Just like there's a difference between Biden now and Biden 10 years ago, 12 years ago. He doesn't even look like the same person, just to be clear, right? Look at Biden from like the 2008 primary debates, and now he just looks different, right? Obviously, he's just older, right? And so I think that that's true. I just don't know if, like, there's definitely a group of people in the White House where you could pin that on him, but like if you're like the administrator of the EPA, like, I don't know, how often are you even really interacting with the president? Like, I don't know how often these guys
just came out. Jerome Powell apparently said, chairman of the Federal Reserve, said he hadn't spoken to Biden in 2 years.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're Jerome Powell, you're like, I'm just Jay Powell, I'm doing my own thing. Who gives a fuck who the president is, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if you guys want to belabor it, but to answer Hutz's question, very small chance in my view that he drops out. Should he drop out? Almost certainly. But that's my.
Well, they are going to grill him tomorrow harder than probably any modern president has been grilled ever. Which is why
it'll be a big.
Which is why it's just so difficult for me to imagine a different
outcome. It's going to be horrible
than what I'm coming to, because they are really going to go after him, and I don't necessarily have a lot of faith that he's going to navigate.
Everyone said Biden would be on drugs in the debate, and here's the thing. Here's what I'm saying: he should have been on drugs. He should have been on drugs. All right, give this man a shot of testosterone. Yeah, give him a shot of testosterone. Give him some ADHD pills. Whatever you got to do. Okay, we got to take this pony
This
show
is
all the way to
United
November.
States of America. There's no drug we can't have without their power control. Yeah. Okay, guys. My last question is for Hutchie, and then I have to bounce, unfortunately. But first of all, I love this conversation. Josiah was like, we turned this entire conversation about Biden.
Josiah's seething right now.
I'm sorry
It's
for the
story.
No,
seething.
listen, it's
the
cool.
Story. It's the
It's
story.
cool. I understand. It's going to be, I promise you, it will be the story next week. And I'm going to ask the same thing. I'm just going to say, guys, are we sympathetic to my notion that the media is keeping this going? We're going to talk about it next week. And I'm just saying. Go ahead, Peach.
I'm going to put Hutch on the spot once more. I'm going to say, Hutch, isn't it true that tomorrow, what you're waiting for, what you're hoping for, and you would breathe a big sigh of relief if he said, my fellow Americans, I want to focus on governing for the remainder of my term. I think it's important for new leadership to step up, and I'm announcing my withdrawal from the race. Wouldn't that make you relieved?
And then I've got a question for Hutch after he answers a follow-up.
At this point, I think I would feel relieved.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I do think I would feel like, okay, there's a finality to it. We have reached the conclusion of that. And so, yes, I will concede that.
So here's my follow-up, Hutch.
Imagine
the relief you feel right now in that hypothetical. Imagine this one instead. President Biden walks up to the podium and he says, my fellow Americans, I have decided that I want to focus on governing for the remaining, 8 months? 4 months? Well, wait a minute.
Well, of his presidency, 6. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, it was 6 months. I'm very proud of the accomplishments of these 4 years, and I do think it's time to pass the torch. So sensitive am I to the concerns of the American people. My confidence is irrelevant. It's about your confidence, and so I'm going to focus on governing. And given that the same polls also say that a majority of Americans feel the same way about my opponent, Donald Trump, anywhere from 50 to 65%, according to the genius at Pondering Politics, please like and subscribe. I am also challenging the presumptive Republican nominee to withdraw from the race as well. And let's please pass the torch of governance on to the next generation. Donald, let's withdraw, and I will see you at the golf course. And then he walks away.
Of course,
Trump would just be like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" Like he would just clown on him for doing something like that. There's
that is not the direction. Wait, Josiah. That's not the direction I thought you were going to take it. And now I'm going to ask a different question to you, Josiah.
Okay.
Because you made me mad. Because that question is a gimme. This is the question for you. If I were to tell you Biden's going to go up there and he says, not in so many words, but fuck the polls. These are unfair questions. I don't know why you're asking this. It's my decision. I beat him last time. How much anxiety am I causing you right now by just saying that?
Dude, of course.
Yeah.
There's no answer to
answer.
There's no answer to any of this which doesn't fill me with enormous anxiety. Are you kidding me? Of course. I told you his answer, the sheer lack of empathy and introspection has grossed me out. The reports that he's locked himself inside the residence with Jill and Hunter Biden, and he's like shutting out other advisors to the extent that reporting is accurate.
God.
Yes, it's incredibly.
Well,
disturbing.
now I'm curious, would you feel relief if he said, for the good of the country, I'm stepping aside?
Me?
No, Josiah.
Oh,
I don't know. I think no matter what, I'm just destined to feel anxious about the election, because for all the reasons we described in this episode and previous episodes about a contested convention or Vice President Harris. Yes, she's polling in some polls ahead of Biden now, but she has also been wildly unpopular for the entirety of the Biden-Harris administration. I don't know, man. I think for all the reasons we talked about before, the advantages they have in the media, the advantages they have with the Electoral College, the fact that
what was asked for you, Josiah. You're dodging. This is the question. What gives you more anxiety? Him saying "fuck the" one of the chatters is really funny. He's like, "That's the best speech ever." Fuck the polls. I won last time. I'll win again. I did so much for this country. Does that give you more anxiety, or the one where he's like, "My fellow Americans, I hear the concerns," and basically the speech you gave? Which of them gives you more anxiety?
I think if it was a definitive, basically fuck anyone who disagrees with me versus I'm dipping, I feel like the stubbornness would freak me out more than a surrender. Yeah.
What do you answer when someone's like, Mr. President, Nancy Pelosi, imagine Nancy Pelosi actually says, step down. The former Speaker of the House, someone you had very close relationship with, she said that that she recommended that you stand down. What is your response to that? How can you give a response to that?
Listen, you give a Trump response. You say, "What? You know what? Fuck Nancy. All my homies hate Nancy." All right, that's what you got to say.
There's no response to that. It is.
You should be like, he could be like, listen, I only engage with congressional leadership, and Pelosi's not part of that anymore.
Like,
so
fuck Pelosi. That's what they said about Clooney. They're like, Clooney left before Biden.
Clooney was in the worst fucking Batman. Fuck that guy. Yeah.
Dude. Like that was so lame.
It's also notable that when Stephanopoulos pressed him, like, what would you do if we got that call? He said it's not going to happen. So if it did happen, I mean, I totally disagree with the Econo Boy. Like, I do think he would step down at that point.
Unless he's actually suffering from some horrible.
There's recalcitrance, and then there's that. Like, that's like a whole other level. That's you need a new word for that.
But old people are the most.
We've seen how Biden handles pretty significant opposition, right? He writes a letter and says, "Fuck you, I'm going to do what I want anyway," right? Like, that's what he's already done.
Well. Now,
to be fair, Hutch, what you're saying, I agree with what you're saying. I'd have to imagine that there is some level of opposition where it would break through to Biden that, like, I mean, at the end of the day, if nobody wants me, nobody wants me. Maybe that's true. It's just that I don't know how. It's a balancing act between what you're saying, which is probably true, and how internal Democrats will actually maneuver. Because again, there is that bias from Democrats of like not creating huge public stinks. And like, I think that to reach the level of what you're describing, I think what it would take would be like Pelosi, Schumer, AOC, Obama, like people like that, like publicly coming out and being like, we have advised President Biden that he needs to step aside. And I don't know if they'll get to that point. Like, I don't know if they will ever be willing to do that. I mean, maybe they will be, but I'd be surprised.
Yeah. I don't know how I'd feel, but my gut check is, again, if the choice is between, hey, I'm stepping down versus, again, another defiant, fuck you, fuck the critics, fuck the polls, fuck everybody else. Yes, that would make me more anxious.
Yeah. But what else can he say, Josiah?
I mean, why would you think that he would say anything else at this point? Has he given us any reason to think that he would?
No, you're asking well, I don't know if he's going to, number one, I don't know what he's going to be asked in this hypothetical about people asking him to resign. I think you can give more diplomatic answers than the ones that we're hypothesizing. And again, to me, how Biden says certain things mattered. I said from the beginning after the debate that if Biden said, listen, again, I'm attentive to these things, but I still believe I'm the person to defeat Trump. If he just made it clear that he did carefully consider, that he genuinely considered what people had to say, I would feel better about the decision, even if the decision is for him to stay in. My problem is, I don't think he has conveyed in his answers that he has seriously considered dropping out.
Yeah.
Right.
Does that make sense? That's what it was that, and I don't know if you all caught this, but there was an NBC report, and I actually had to quickly delete this tweet because it turned out that it was fake news.
Fake news.
Yeah. So there was an NBC report which said that even though the president had planned to, I think it was either Camp David or Delaware, but he was going to have a conversation with his family. It was pre-planned, but that part of the trip was now going to be about re-examining his future campaign. And then the White House came out and said, no, that's bullshit. We're not talking about that. The trip is purely about what was already planned in advance. And so, but in the tweet that I had to quickly delete, I'm like, if this reporting is true, this makes me feel much better about whatever the president decides. The fact that he is going to genuinely consult with advisors and family, the fact that he's like, oh shit, I really could lose this. I'm going to have this conversation. Yeah. My problem with all of Biden's answers since then is they suggest to me that he has not seriously considered dropping out, which is a problem.
And what the White House is saying there is like, really? It just didn't come up. You just didn't talk to your family about like the biggest fucking political scandal in the last like 4 or 5 months. That just, no, you just, oh, how's it doing, son? Yeah, you know, that conviction, real tough. I mean, we'll figure. Like, none of that shit came up. Like, let's be real here. Like, obviously, you guys are talking about this, and I mean, come on.
Well, maybe they did it for a reason. You got to understand too. I think that the four of us are atypical of the average voter. Maybe they're thinking, "My God, if we even signal that we're taking this under advisement, that it's a betrayal of weakness. To somebody like me, I think it's a sign of strength, and it would endear me more to their decision. They might be thinking, fuck, if it gets out to the, the however many millions of Democratic voters that we're even thinking about dropping out, that means we should. Like this is where the electorate is. Like any sign of introspection is seen as weakness that should be punished.
Yeah. All right. Peace.
I gotta go feed my pets here, boys.
I gotta wrap up.
This has been a very hopeful episode of Live and Learn.
Live and Learn.
Certainly lived.
This was episode 1.
We certainly learned.
This was the first one because we have a name now.
One.
I'm telling you. So. I think if we ever have a sequel, it should be Live, Laugh, Love or something, or maybe again those should be shirts or something. I have no idea.
That's the t-shirt.
Your basic Southern roots are coming into focus more and more. Because when I visited Florida, I saw a lot of that, like Live, Laugh, Love, that kind of stuff.
Bro, yeah. Do they not have those signs in New York?
No, they mostly just have garbage everywhere.
Hey, fair. Hey, sidebar. Are the four of us, as the election gets nearer, are we going to, because Hutch and I talked about this weeks ago and just shit's gotten crazy, but like participating in more debates and panels and stuff like, and definitely definitely events and canvassing and shit. Yeah. But what about making the case against Trump and Republicans as we get closer?
100%.
Well, again, Adam and Sitch said that they would be down to talk to me, so maybe I can get Josiah and as like a well,
hey,
I don't know.
They said they could talk to me too, motherfucker.
Well, I'll float some names.
No, I'm fucking. I'm reaching out to. I think we
joint Sitch and Adam Live and Learn episode.
Yeah, you guys need to. You guys do the front. I have to work something out with them privately because they're hurt, and I don't want to hurt their feelings anymore. I want to clear the air and make sure they're not being actively antagonized by me and feeling unsafe. So on that note, I love everyone, the audience. I know that that can be hard to hear, but that's where I'm at, and I think that's where we should all be at.
Yeah. All right, fellas. Well, we'll do this again next Wednesday for the next episode of Live and Learn. Appreciate everybody, and it'll be interesting to see where Hutch is next Wednesday. We're going to track his.
We need to kill Biden.
He's going to be a Trump supporter in the next 2 episodes.
No.
Wow, let's not go that far.
Yeah.